And I want to tell you about something that occurred very early in my term of office. I was meeting with some Alaskan natives, and my executive assistant knocked on the door, and she came in and she wanted to have a little whispering conference with me, and she said, "I wouldn't interrupt, Mr. Secretary, but something unusual is happening right now that I think you need to know about, and it's not been scheduled." So I said, "Well, what is it?" And she said, "Well, you have a dozen Native spiritual leaders that have come from all over the country, all regions of the country. They didn't make an appointment, but they have come here and they want to meet with you and they want to pray with you." So after hearing that, I asked the Alaskan natives that I was visiting with in my office, I said, "Would you mind if we just took a little break?" I explained what it was, and they said, "Absolutely, we would like to do this. Would we be permitted to stay in the room with you?" And so the 12 spiritual leaders were invited into my office. And I won't go into a lot of description, but basically they stood in a circle in the office, and one at a time, in their own way, spiritually, they said prayers for me, for my staff, that we would be able to measure up to the enormous responsibilities that we have to do. I also, as I traveled throughout Indian country, it was quite an experience to see that in virtually everything that we did out there, in whatever event it was, it always started with prayer. You don't see that much in America, but in Native communities in Indian country, that is the order of the day. They are very spiritual people in all quarters of the United States where these Native tribes continue to live. And perhaps it was because of those prayers, but also because of a lot of work and cooperative effort that I think we were able to have an impressive array of accomplishments. I can't highlight all of them, but I just wanted to give you a little flavor of what we were able to accomplish in the 3 years that I was able to serve in this position. I mentioned one at the very beginning because I think it is something that has lasting impact. There's a process that occurs when the federal government is making decisions that affect the lives of Native people, that Native people would like to have some say in what the outcome is. And so the word that has been used, I don't know what's the best word you could come up with, it's called consultation. When President Obama met with tribal leaders in 2009, he invited all 564 tribes then to send a representative to meet with him. So he met with a very large group. He announced that as President of the United States, he would require all departments and agencies of the federal government to improve their consultation policies with Indian tribes. So in the Department of Interior, we undertook actually trying to be the role model of how we would recraft consultation. And our method was to select 24 tribal leaders that actually were given the responsibility of coming up with the first draft. And that says something about our attitude. It's not that we were going to impose some policy upon them, but we wanted them to draft the policy. And that we would then assign senior leaders of the Department of Interior, not some underlings, to meet with them to work things out so that we would improve how we consult. The other thing that was remarkable about the policy is that it wasn't just with Indian Affairs, like the Bureau of Indian Affairs or Bureau of Indian Education. Secretary Salazar said this policy covers all agencies within and bureaus within the Department of Interior. They will consult better now. And in December of last year, that policy was formally adopted and signed, so it is operational now. Undoubtedly, there will be some time as we continue to work on that it will be revised to improve. One of the other things I wanted to mention is the budget. And when I came into office as Assistant Secretary, since I've been involved in government elective office for 12 years, I knew something about budgeting because I was on the Appropriations Committee in the Idaho Legislature. And looking at the Economic Times, remember what it was like in January of 2009? We were losing about 750,000 jobs a month. Remember that? The stock market was losing ground, ultimately losing about half of its value. They said it was the worst economic time since the Great Depression. And housing market had fallen. It was a terrible situation, and given my experience, what I thought I was going to preside over are deep cuts in a budget serving Native people that was already very, very deficient. So I was kind of bracing myself for some really difficult things to occur. And what happened is that as we started that 2009, rather than see cuts, the President, working on a bipartisan basis with the United States Congress, added $185 million to Indian Affairs budget in the Department of Interior, which meant a 3.4% increase. So that was great news. It was not the best news, because the best news came the next year. In 2010, the President, continuing to work with the Congress, instead of giving us cuts in the budget, gave us an increase of 10.24%, which meant in the first 2 years of service back there, the budget for Indian Affairs and Interior increased by 14%. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it, for really tough times? But the amazing thing was that what is called the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was put into place, which gave additional infusion of money into Indian Affairs. Now, normally, when a major piece of legislation has occurred like that, oftentimes Native people have been left out of those major initiatives, but not this time. Within the Department of Interior, we saw another $750 million come in that was one-time money available to build infrastructure to create jobs in Indian country. When you talk about jobs, most American people don't understand what a challenge it is in these communities of Indian people across the country. Right now, we have an unemployment rate in the United States of around 8.5%. 8.5%. When I would travel across Indian country, it was not unusual for me to go into communities where the unemployment rate was in excess of 80%. 80%. 10 times what America is experiencing in what we call the worst economy. So you can see we had a lot of challenge in front of us. And with the infusion of the stimulus dollars, our budget in that first 2 years actually increased, adding the one-time money in, to 36%. And I just want to thank the President and the Congress for caring enough to, in bad economic times, try to do something for what has been called as the first Americans. Long overdue.